Welcome to Creating Flow, the podcast where I, Joni Francisco, hope to empower women helpers and healers to unblock their energy and unlock their power. We're tackling that tough reality that many in the healing professions often sacrifice their well-being in the pursuit of helping others. Not only do I believe this is just plain wrong, it ends up draining their vitality and diminishing their ability to serve. I've experienced this struggle firsthand, and I've emerged with the insights and the strategies to break this cycle. That's why each week we explore practical methods not only to replenish your energy, but to also cultivate abundance in your life. You'll gain actionable steps to fill your cup first, ensuring you can overflow with energy and serve others without burning out. Is this you? Are you stuck in an endless loop? Every time you feel like you're going for more, you get pulled back into your current loop and you just can't make it out. Well, this week, you can join Theresa Lear Levine and me as we explore how being disconnected from yourself keeps you stuck in an endless loop, how to get out of that loop, and how doing so opens you up to receive all that you desire. As an EFT master practitioner and hypnotherapist, as well as an international best-selling author of the book Becoming More Me, Tapping into Success and the Subconscious Secrets of an ADHD Entrepreneurial Mom, Theresa implements a unique and integrative approach to nervous system regulation, subconscious mind work, the law of attraction, and energy strategy that has been life-changing for her and countless clients. But first, if you like what you hear today, then I would highly suggest you joining the Abundance and Flow community on School. Not only are there free, awesome AF trainings, in there we are building a community of other helpers ready to have more abundance and flow in their lives. Let's journey together towards freedom in life, health, and business. The link to join is in the show notes, and I hope to see you there. Hi, Theresa. I'm so honored to have you on the show today. I'm going to jump right in. When I first had this inspiration to have you on the show, I thought it'd be perfect to dive into how tapping can help you reconnect with yourself, bring you back into your body and living in the present moment. And we're going to jump into that. But first, I just really want to say that as I read your book, I really resonated so much, both professionally and personally. And so everybody knows her book is Becoming More Me. And there's so much gold in there. Like, you want to check it out. And I wanted to highlight one particular quote in there that really jumped out at me, but also is just so relevant to what we're going to speak about today. And that is, you deserve the consciousness, love, awareness, and enjoyment that comes when you can realign with your inner guidance when facing challenges. And I feel like this so beautifully encapsulates the idea of like how life is still going to hand you unpredictabilities and challenging experiences. But if you can realign, you get to choose how you live.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I'm glad that resonated with you. And thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, I think it's going to be so good for listeners here. The thing that brings me to this idea of discussing this is that I really feel like there's so many people not really being present in their life. And in some ways, I feel like this kind of makes them a victim to their life. And they're just going through the motions, but they're not really living the life that they want. And so do you see that in some of your clients too?
Oh, I see it in myself. I definitely see it in my clients. You know, that's a lot of what probably came through in the book was my own renderings of it and the ways I didn't feel present in my own life, which is why learning about the things that we're going to talk about today, the subconscious mind, the nervous system, and how I could apply different modalities to regulating them and releasing things from them was such a breath of fresh air to me, because I was constantly leaking power to past things that had already happened that I couldn't do anything about, or leaking power into the future, things I was anxious about or trying to figure out in advance, though they may never actually happen. And it left me with very little in the present to be present with. And, you know, that's the only place we have any power at all. So most of us are pretty depleted in our present moment and not showing up fully. So yeah, finding out ways to call our power back is a huge motivator for me with this work I do.
Yeah, same. I just had a really beautiful client experience earlier today. The same. It's just like pulling that power back. There's always the pieces. I know you're big into the forgiveness practice too, of the places we've let them go in the past and, you know, resolving that too as we go forward. But yeah, being able to call those pieces back into us so that we can be whole in mind, body, spirit, and our emotions. And so on that same line, you explained some of the things you felt. What are some of the other things that you see, like those predictable characteristics of people that are living, not intentionally, they're living not in the present, and that come up as a rub for them?
Yeah. So I tend to work mostly with people who are not only lacking presence, but usually also have ADHD or some other, busy-minded distraction. I mean, isn't that most of us these days anyway? But you'll see it come up in people when they're just kind of glancing at their phone, talking to you. Or, for me personally, it used to always come up, people would come over and instead of feeling worthy enough to just sit with someone and give of my time and receive their attention, I would be folding laundry or trying to do the dishes or wiping my countertops or whatever else, just not fully there, immersing in the experience. And I hear a lot of those same things from my clients where it's like, I'm always trying to do so many things at once, and I don't feel like I actually get to enjoy the experience. Or dealing with a lot of moms always trying to document and record and photograph and whatever else, and not actually being able to be there and enjoy it. And worrying, future pacing, that if they don't do it, who will?
Yeah. And those are perfect examples. And I guess further to go down that, what makes that painful for people?
I think when we realize what we're giving up by doing those things and what we could have had potentially if we had surrendered to the moments and let the laundry sit until later and really found true connection with a friend, or said, screw it on the photographs and let the memories live in our head, or whatever else, then we've realized that it's all just kind of busyness and noise, and that the real things that we really do desire, when most of us look at what we really want out of life, it's a feeling. It's not a thing. And that feeling comes to us abundantly through presence.
Yeah, I would say a lot of times, even in my own life, like often you're craving that connection, and then you've just had this experience with your friends and you're distracted or thinking about the next thing, and you've just missed the opportunity, right? I feel like there's so many opportunities to have all the things we want. But again, we're just not present to it because we are either living in the past or living in the future and not now. But also, I think that comes up for people that people might not realize is that past experiences, traumas, things like that will trigger us in situations that we're feeling unsafe in, right? And anxious. And so sometimes we say this as it's a choice, right? I'm sure you believe it's a choice too, but also at some point, sometimes it doesn't feel like a choice until we've recognized that we're going into these flight or fight or freeze, these unsafe things that don't allow us to actually be present because it doesn't feel safe in our nervous system.
Ooh, I love that you call that out because that's so true. And until you start first getting the awareness of not being present, and then you can start looking at, well, what am I trying to avoid here? Like, what do I actually get out of not showing up fully? How is that actually maybe serving me, protecting me, keeping me safe, and keeping me in this Groundhog Day of unwanted outcomes that I'll stay in indefinitely because, gosh darn it, it's familiar. And then you can start unraveling that. And that's really like the beautiful stuff. I love that in relationship. I have nuggets like that on a weekly basis, I would say, with my husband, where I notice some interesting pattern or some uncomfortable thing that it's like, ooh, time to face that one head on now. And we do. And, when it doesn't get easier, it doesn't get more comfortable, but it does become a process that is then a habit and a routine, just like the things that aren't serving us. So it's a new thing that does. And noticing, for instance, with the laundry and the dishes and stuff that I used to do, there were unworthiness beliefs really under there that I wasn't worthy of that time or attention, or that maybe we weren't as good of friends as I thought we were, and I was just going to be let down, or that true connection wasn't actually available to me. And, so I might as well just get some stuff done because I'm going to have to do it later anyway, and there was also the time scarcity beliefs underneath of that, but if, I don't really have time to sit with somebody because later I'm going to have the kids home and I'll never get things done. And I'm going to be, quote, behind for the rest of my life, even though there's no such thing. So yeah, there's a lot of beliefs to unravel underneath of the habits once we're aware of them.
Yeah, I do also believe in abundance, like I know you do as well. And it is interesting how when we're in that space again of like, we're thinking about the future, like all of these desires that we have, maybe some people haven't even been able to awaken and accept that they can have desires yet, right? But some of us that even have, and I think you called this like goal fatigue or goal trauma or something in the book, but goal trauma. So it's another way, like we take our desires and we turn them into these goals that, they're high achieving, sometimes unattainable, but even the way we're looking at them is keeping us stuck also. But what I want to say about this is that we have the desire, but we don't believe it's available to us really. And you were kind of talking about other beliefs about time scarcity and things like that. But when we don't really believe that we can have those things, it's another way of keeping us not actually changing the action that we're doing now to make a different result, right? We get stuck in that loop that you were talking about. And I think that's one of the things you do great in that book. Like everybody, the Becoming More Me book, like it has such good tools and like you can just do them today. You can just set the book down and do them. Like she's done a really good job. And the audiobook was really awesome because you can listen to it and she has extras available so that you can look at the videos and do it along with that. So that's where the tools come in, right? So why don't you explain a little bit about the tapping and the hypnosis and how that can kind of bring us back into the presence, but also then be open to what's going to come in the future in a way that's safe for us.
Well, there's so much there. So then my ADHD brain now goes, where do I begin? And I'll begin by explaining, I suppose, a little bit of science. So EFT tapping, for anybody who's not familiar, is a wonderful nervous system regulation tool. And it combines ancient Chinese medicine with modern day psychology. And I fell in love with it because, well, just like my ADHD brain, it likes to multitask. So we can be focused on one thing and yet we're lowering our stress hormone. We're lowering cortisol and other stress hormones while we're tapping in all areas. So I know I tell a story in the book about how when I was first introduced to it, I was really sick. And I went to this retreat and just kind of did basic group level tapping on anxiety. But while I was doing that tapping on anxiety, not only was my anxiety really making some leaps and bounds and releasing itself, but also my sinuses were clearing and my throat felt better and all sorts of other things were happening. And I was like, this is such magic that I can be focused on one thing and getting benefits. They call them borrowed benefits with emotional freedom technique in other areas. I've had clients show up to sessions that, sprained their ankle earlier in the day and I see them like hobbling over to hop on Zoom and I'm like, what's going on? We're going to work on childhood trauma or something. And they're like, sprained my ankle earlier. I was like, okay, well, tell me how it feels, like scale of 1 to 10. And then we're just going to forget about it. And then we work on childhood trauma for the hour. And I'm like, hey, how's the ankle? And they're like, oh my gosh, it feels so much better. These things are just really cool how interconnected all of it is. So emotional freedom techniques are a great place to work on literally anything that you can feel. And doesn't matter whether it's way back in the past. And I'm talking like it could be somebody else's past life before yours, like generational trauma stuff or future pacing stuff that may never happen that we're just worried about, or the here and now. And then hypnotherapy allows us to access that subconscious mind. So like with emotional freedom techniques, we can take the things that we're kind of aware of and we can work with them. We can uncover things that we're not aware of and work on those. And we can step into a new level of presence, a new level of logic and rationality. With the hypnotherapy, we get to access the subconscious mind, which is, that's like the biggest Google Drive ever of just, accumulating stuff from when we were born and just saving it. Pristine condition, but we don't access most of it. So we have just oodles and oodles of information there. And a lot of it's running the show for us, and we don't even realize it. And we can get into this super relaxed state where our awareness is actually heightened. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about hypnotherapy, like you're asleep or you're not in control. And, one of the things my clients usually say is like, didn't really feel that much different than when I'm awake, but I felt really like dialed in on things and like, it's your subconscious mind that's choosing kind of where things go versus your logical, rational mind that might, if you were going to say, hey, why do I have social anxiety or why do I have trouble with focus or procrastination or whatever, you might logically choose some memories or some circumstances in your life that you think are related. your subconscious mind might take you down a totally different path, and things that you never would have consciously put together as being root cause reasons why you don't show up the way you want to in your life. It's fascinating. So I like to piggyback the two techniques and use the hypnotherapy to discover the stuff that we're just not even aware is happening, and then use the EFT to kind of regulate, integrate, and get it all to, to happen differently within our system. So that's kind of the what as far as the modalities. And then you asked, I think, how once we use those things, it kind of applies for our future self and like where we're heading. So it's kind of like that old, layers of the onion analogy that we all like to use. I'm never really sure what's at the middle of the onion that we're all trying to get to, but we all want to get there. So, we peel off layers as we do this, and we get closer to that center root, whatever it is that's happening in there. And with each layer, we're a different person. I mean, we're a different person than we were yesterday, even if we're not doing these things. We're always changing, always, hopefully evolving and becoming, even if we do have these habits that seem really sticky and tricky, we're always changing. So as we become conscious in a new way, we're showing up differently. And then we meet and greet new things in new ways. So as we stumble upon the new things that our future self is going to come upon, we're going to handle them differently than we would have had we not done this work. And I think that's, that was one of the biggest things I noticed when I first started doing it. And my kids were much younger, and there was a lot of like me showing up not in my best emotional state. And, I'd be the mom that yells or, that just didn't feel like handling it anymore. And I started using EFT tapping on my parenting and my, emotional regulation, the most probably right off the bat. And it was amazing to me the way that it was almost like I could rise out of my body and look over the situation and assess it and see, okay, what do I want her to do next? And kind of give myself instructions that seemed almost like they were coming from like above or outside of myself, and then actually take action on them versus being like driven by a motor that was just like crazy town. So yeah, it does make a big difference.
Yeah, I love that. That was beautifully illustrated there. It's almost like future self that already embodies that could come in and like witness it too. I love that idea of that, like how we can, the future can actually come to us in order to meet it. And so it's pretty interesting.
The thing, like the future's come to us a million different times in our life, right? And so we've had all of these different futures that we've already lived. And for me, the change is about like, if you weren't happy in all of these other times that you stepped into your future, or all of these other times that you achieved things, because I'm sure plenty of us have many, many successes and accolades and things that we have accomplished in our life to be proud of. And yet we're still looking for that next thing. But if those things didn't make you happy, and those things didn't you weren't feeling that love for yourself and that enjoyment of everything, what's going to be different with the next future that you step into? And that's really, for me, what the becoming is about really cultivating that genuine love for self, acceptance, forgiveness, and then showing up and embodying that so that as you step into that next future, you receive it and you enjoy it and you're there for it.
Yeah, I think I made a note here, and I want to bring that back about how you do the tapping and the hypnosis really can bring people back into their body, right? And I feel like that's a big piece of what's missing about living in the present, is that we have, for whatever the reasons, right? Like life experience, trauma, safety, we've kind of left our bodies. Like it's kind of a weird thing. But when we can bring ourselves back in, we have access to that information you were talking about earlier. And I'd have, different practices than you, but they have the same goals, right? Like the embodiment. Like I do myofascial release with my clients, and that accesses, gets them in their body and accesses that. I use Reiki, and it is like being in a hypnotic state, right? And they are able to then access, like they're awake, but they're accessing a completely different part of their brain for which they can get the information like you were talking about.
Yeah, those are great modalities.
Yeah. So, it's like there's many ways to get in, right? And these are done practitioner-led, both the things we've talked about before, but like unlike myofascial release, which we can do on ourselves. But I feel like tapping really is a great way for someone to do some of this themselves and they can just jump right in, especially with like the videos that you have available and stuff.
Absolutely. There's no reason that people can't be doing this work on their own on many different levels. I think you did ask me as part of that last question, which I didn't address, was about creating that safety. And, that's something that you do need to have a little bit of discretion, whether you're going to be doing work yourself or with the practitioner, because some things you could potentially re-traumatize yourself and feel less safe if you're not guided by someone who can really hold space for that and help you through it. But we create that safety through a combination of ways. Regulating the nervous system creates safety, and releasing the dis-ease, the energetic blockages, helps things to return to a more normal state. We create safety through hypnosis by realizing that it's not you anymore. Like whatever it was that caused that, we can kind of disconnect from that and step into that new version of who you want to be. And also through connecting with that future self and aligning with that frequency and that vibration so that you can magnetize it to you and you to it, and feel safe in that already having happened. Because even when we want things that make total sense and are beautiful and good, and like, how could we not want to bring this into our life? It's unsafe. Whether that's leveling up with your income, bringing new love or relationship into your life, moving, leaving a relationship, whatever the thing might be that's actually a great thing, it's not safe because it's not what you've been doing and it's not what you're familiar with. So when we can get the nervous system and the subconscious mind on board with that, with these various things, then that safety is created.
Yeah, I think a couple things there are super important that people understand, that change, presents unsafety to our subconscious. And it is the craziest thing. And I always say our subconscious wants to keep us safe and sane. Some people say sane, but I'm like, it's same. And once you do that, you'd rather stay in the miserable than go into the unknown. And so if we can bypass that anyway during coaching or while we're in a session or something like that, I think we can really hold that safe space for them, right? And it also, even though the feelings of like guilt and shame and judgment come up during a session, again, like you said, they're not experiencing it as themselves right now. So you're able to get deeper, as you said, in those onions during sessions with a practitioner, because they're holding the safe space for you. But also you're able to then kind of look with my favorite eyes is curiosity, right? And instead of bringing up, if your nervous system is not regulated and you're still kind of in flight or fight or freeze, you're unable to access that without having judgment over what happened to you or for other people. And then when you're in this more hypnotic state or this place where you're accessing subconscious and that rest and restore, that doesn't happen the same way. And maybe you notice that, but I definitely do notice that for myself and for clients. Yeah. So that's amazing. So I do love that, again, we kind of talked about how people can do tapping on their own and some of the ways that doing it with a practitioner or a coach will deepen the experience, I guess you could say, especially until you've been through a lot of your stuff, right? Like as you start feeling it and you survived, you also teach yourself that you can then do that. And another thing I would love the listeners to just know is when you're on a healing journey, you're doing healing work, you will only be able to access the stuff that is safe, I feel like, and at the time, right? And so again, that's where having a practitioner or a coach or someone come in and hold that space for you allows you to go a little bit deeper because you have an external, boundary of safety for yourself.
And a new and different perspective, somebody that has not walked in your shoes or lived your life that might see things in a different way, which is really helpful, I think.
Oh, for sure. And that's how we get to the other side, right? Is because then we're able to, I always just poke holes in the truth and tell yourself a better lie. I heard that in your book too. And it really is, these experiences we've given meaning to over time or not given them meaning. And then we've created stories. And so if we're able to go back and just say even a little small thing about that wasn't true, then it opens up this idea of, oh, what else wasn't, true for me? And we can bring in something that we wanted to feel the way we wanted that experience to be. And the most amazing part of that is exactly, but we don't just rewrite it for that that experience or where we are now, we rewrite it for all of our experiences. And so that really changes the way our nervous system responds to all things in the world, right?
We can collapse so many of these beliefs that aren't serving us. Yeah. I love seeing it happen in session. It's like these really cool little like aha moments or like this like bubbling up that seems to happen in people as they just kind of like release something. And it could be like the simplest thing. I always find that when I make these breakthroughs, you expect this like, I don't know, this huge thing to happen. And it's just like, really? Like, I was capable the whole time. Or it was there the whole time. Or now I'm just finally seeing it. But it's so crystal clear when you finally see it.
Yeah, that's me too. Like, it's just like goosebumpy when you get to the thing that's called like the burr that's in the soul, right? And you get to explore it. And then again, even in the simplicity of the experience, right? Because a lot of this is really developed when we're like 6, 9, like in that area. And so the lens we have now is so incredibly different than the one we had then. So just even little things, right? Like that you might, I have this weird orange example coming to me, this never happened to me before, but like people decide they don't like oranges because at one point when they were like 6, they either ate way too many, and were sick, or the person next to them had like a rotten one or something. And so that becomes a belief that you don't like oranges when really you just didn't like that experience of those oranges, right? Or, lots of things could have happened. You got in trouble for eating the orange or, things that you have paired with it.
So much of this comes through in my client work with like body work and sex, like the earliest things that we were exposed to or taught and the beliefs that those impart, like create lasting things that we carry over into our adult relationships.
Yeah, I can imagine that too.
Even though they're not us.
So just like a little refresh on what becomes available for people if they do this work, and I'll let you lead that.
Well, I mean, possibilities are infinite, aren't they? So, I mean, what becomes available is more of yourself and your ability to both give and receive and, comprehend and just, I mean, awareness. Awareness is such a gift. And when we cultivate it and we elevate our consciousness, there really just is no limit to what's available to us or to what that next level is going to have us stepping into. I've seen that mean, deeper love and better relationships for my clients. I've seen that mean, more success in business or more income. I've seen that mean letting go of just years and years of different traumas or abuses or things that people carry around like they're part of them, and being able to finally be free and feel lighter from that. And, we can develop self-confidence and we can develop a lot of things, but they're only as good as the worthiness that we have. Like worthiness is always going to be that multiplier. So when we can develop that self-worth also, then all of the other tools and things that we've been working on making better are finally usable.
Yeah, that's beautiful and covers so much of, just the opportunities that open for people. And one thing hit for me during that we didn't really talk about is the idea that this is really all vibration, right? And we're changing all that vibration. And so if we can move the stuff that we don't need, that's not serving us, and bring in the stuff that is true to us, then that manifestation or that like being able to attract those things, anything really that you desire, you're now able to vibrate on a level that will actually receive that. And so, like you said, anything is really available to us, right?
The vibrations really do matter. And what's interesting, and I'm not sure how I'm going to tie this back, but it's coming to me, so I'm going to go with it. I noticed that when I went from having 2 kids to 3 kids, and then I had 4 kids, like so much change as far as what I could actually keep up with. Like prior to 3 children and beyond, it was like all my photographs had like, titles on them, and they were all like categorized in folders and stuff by digital photography. And, I actually felt like I could get to the end of my to-do list for some reason back then. And then once I got to that next level, it was like, you're never going to be done. And, you start to just feel better letting things go. And I think you stop trying to manage so much. And I think when you get to that point where it's like, you're never going to get to the end of it. There's always going to be something more you want to become and do. Then you can just let go of like the minutia and the things and the stuff and the to-dos. And you have to step into being because it's the way to get there faster. And it's the way to actually accomplish things versus life before then. There were like lists and I could just check them off and do them. And I felt like I was just moving along, and there's no way to do it all now. So I have to lean on the vibration and the being in order to be constantly next leveling.
Yeah, that's really the human experience, right? If we were to sum it up as being. And in that state, we're able to receive everything we want, but also just be present. And so, I think that's a great way to leave this. And if you had any last things you wanted to add, or if you have, something you wanted to leave for the listeners.
Absolutely. So, if you've been listening and this jives with you and you want to explore this further, I would love to offer your listeners a free 30-minute session with me. All they need to do is hop on social media on Instagram and send me a DM and just send me the word Joni, Joni, and I will know that you've listened to the show, and I will offer you a free 30-minute session and a lovely discount if you're interested in going forward and doing some of this work. And Joni and I are actually going to be seeing each other in person and meeting for the first time in a couple of weeks. And so I'm going to do some EFT tapping with her. I think we'll do EFT tapping. Who knows? Maybe we'll do hypnotherapy. We'll see where things go. But I'm going to add that into, I have this amazing resource called the Private Sessions that has over 70 different tapping sessions. So you can always find something that applies to you and your different issues. And I've also got great instructions on how to personalize them. And you can get that by going to theprivatesessions.com. So there will be a lovely session in there with me and Joni, hopefully that we can do in person in a couple of weeks. And those are wonderful things that can serve you.
Yeah, so exciting. I'm so excited for both meeting you in person, being in the space that we're going to be in, but also just to experience your work. And that's super generous. So yeah, thank you so much, Theresa, for that offer for people. And all of that will be in the show notes for you, so you can just have easy access to what she has provided for you. And that's going to be a wrap for today. So again, always sending love to all my listeners and love to you, Theresa. And I will catch the rest of you next week. So amazing. You've reached the end of another episode of Creating Flow. And I want you to know I appreciate your presence and to remind you, knowledge is powerful, but taking action is transformative. I invite you to take the next step to activate your full potential today by scheduling a complimentary 15-minute session with me. A no-obligation chat to identify the messages your body is sending you and how I can not only help you understand these messages, but teach you how to heal your body in order to have an abundance of health and energy in your life and business. Visit the link in the show notes to book a call, and I'll see you next week.